Hi folks, TheFilipinaPea here, and you're probably wondering where here is. Well, once again, my power went out as I was getting ready to film, and since I'm on a schedule, I decided to just set up some candles, sit on the floor, and shoot the video anyway. So what's the subject of our little candlelight chat? Well, today I'd like to discuss the term yellow fever, what it means, why they call it that, and who's affected by it. But for many of the people watching this, the most important question is, have you contracted a bad case of yellow fever? So what exactly is yellow fever? Well, let's take a look at the textbook definition. Yellow fever is described as the fetishization of East Asian women by people of other ethnicities. But why use the word yellow? Well, apparently that refers to our skin tone. I never really saw myself as yellow, more like tan. And although some people think it's a derogatory term, it doesn't really bother me. Call me brown or call me yellow, call me beige. I don't care. But the most interesting word in that definition is fetishization. So let's define what a fetish is too. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a fetish is a form of a sexual desire in which gratification is strongly linked to a particular object, activity, or a part of the body other than the sex organs. Some researchers even go so far as to claim that a fetish is something a person needs to either fantasize about or actually be experiencing in order to, reach the peak. When I was doing research for one of my other videos, I kept seeing these claims about the dangers of fetishizing Asian women. And I realized that whenever we hear the F word, it's almost always about Asians. You never seem to hear about a Latino fetish or a black fetish or a white fetish, even though there are plenty of guys who prefer each one of those races. But when it involves Asians, suddenly it becomes a fetish. But why? Like it or not, the term fetish has the negative connotation of something shameful. It creates a mental image of a kinky weirdo in a trench coat who's hiding some perverted sexual desire and hiding something else, just out of sight. But look at the definition again. A fetish is just a strong desire for an object, activity, or part of the body. Now, there are plenty of guys out there who have a strong desire for boobs or legs, but for some reason, that's just fine. And it doesn't even get its own label. But if a man thinks feet are attractive, he's got a fetish, just like someone who prefers Asian women. I guess that means someone who likes Asian feet is really a sicko. It just seems ridiculous and arbitrary how we apply these labels to some things but not to the others. When a woman prefers taller men, we don't call that a height fetish. When a man only dates women who weigh less than he does, we don't call that a weight fetish. So can't we just call it a preference when someone finds Asian women more attractive? And if we're gonna call that a fetish, what percentage of people have other fetishes? Well, according to a 2016 study in the UK, 75% of people surveyed said they had at least one fetish, but most of them said they felt there was a stigma attached to it. Another interesting thing was that 28% said they had more than one fetish. That's an awful lot of fetishes. So what exactly are they? Well, after reading a whole bunch of surveys, purely for the purpose of doing research for this video, of course, I realized that people have more kinks than I possibly could have imagined. And I can imagine a lot. One of the most common is an interest in BDSM, which means bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, and masochism. So break out the whips, ropes, and handcuffs and blindfolds because an astounding 40 to 70% of us report fantasizing about BDSM. And for some reason, Americans have the most interest in that activity. So all I can say is, you kinky Americans! I'm actually not a fan of BDSM myself, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Another one that tops the list is group sex, meaning threesomes, foursomes, or moresomes. A whopping 89% of us say they either fantasize about or engage in group sex. And check out these percentages. Only 13% of women and 5% of men say they've never considered it. Rounding out the top three most common ones is the foot fetish. According to Psychology Today, 14% of hetero men have a foot fetish, which means that if 100,000 people watch this video, 15,000 of them all have the same interest. But that just scratches the surface of a very long list. There's voyeurism, or watching other people have sex. There's cuckolding, which is watching your wife having sex with another man. There's a fetish for role play, acting out sexy scenarios with or without costumes. There's even a furry fetish where people dress head to toe in animal outfits. And as strange as that might sound, just remember that what seems weird to you sounds perfectly acceptable and exciting to someone else. And then there's exhibitionism, water sports, food play, spanking, wax play, a pregnancy fetish, and literally hundreds of others. But those aren't even the unusual ones on the list. Check this out. There's brontophilia, or getting turned on by thunderstorms. There's claustrophilia, or the desire to get squashed into a tight space while having sex. And what about nebulophilia, where you get aroused by fog or smoke? And there's even queerophilia, which is not exactly what you're thinking. It's a fetish involving hands. Now, I know I'm gonna get asked this question 100 times, so let me save you the trouble, guys. Some of you are gonna say that if 75% of all people have a fetish, then there's a high probability that I have one too, right? So let's just say that mine is somewhere in the list above and leave it at that, okay? So why did I just give you a rundown of sexual fetishes? Well, besides the fact that it's interesting as heck, I wanted to show you all the competition when considering Asian women as a fetish. After going through all those other kinks, it doesn't seem to fit the list, does it? It's almost as if they're trying to make an attraction to Asians sound kinky or something that carries a stigma. But the fact is, in numerous studies from 1995, 2007, 2013, and again in 2018, it was found that men of all races generally rated Asian women as the most attractive. And for those of you that asked me to provide the evidence, I listed all my sources in the description box. So instead of being some unusual desire or weird kink, it just sounds like a fairly common preference. So why call it a fetish? Well, maybe the term fetishizing Asian women is about more than just looks. Could it have something to do with all the other things associated with Asians? The stereotypical submissiveness or the hyperfemininity? But if it's not just about attractiveness, how can it fit the definition of a fetish, which is, once again, an intense sexual desire for an object, activity, or a part of the body, and something a person needs in order to be satisfied? Asian women aren't objects. We're not an activity or a part of the body. And I think even guys with yellow fever can perform just fine with other women, if given the chance. So why is it labeled like that? I know I'm gonna get a lot of blowback on this, which kind of sounds like yet another fetish, blowbacking, which is really not, at least as far as I know. But a lot of people are probably gonna claim that having a preference for Asian women is somehow racist and puts the women in danger of objectification and even violence. And maybe they're right. I'm no sociologist, I'm just a Filipina. But I can tell you that I certainly don't see it like that. The reputation of foreigners who end up with a Filipina is not that they beat you or abuse you, but quite the opposite. They tend to be very caring and gentle. And as far as the men coming to Southeast Asia to find a partner, I don't think it has much to do with an Asian fetish. It's just a preference that many men have when they see what we have to offer, especially when you compare it to your options over there. The fact that you're also attracted to our looks is just a bonus. So if you find yourself in a severe case of yellow fever, don't call a doctor, call a nurse, a Filipina nurse. Well, that's it for today. And if you come up with a funny definition for blowbacking that doesn't involve any obscene words, just post it in the comments section for a shot of winning the coveted Funniest Comment of the Day award. And as always, I'll be back on Friday with something to amuse, inform, and entertain. Till then, folks.
Approaching Omicron standard orbit, Mr. Pater. Yes, sir.
Planet Omicron, Captain. Code 710.
Code 710 means under no circumstances are we to approach that planet. No circumstances whatsoever.
Omicron is home to a species of long-haired, tan-skinned, supposedly irresistible females called Filipinas.
Paradise. We're going in.
Captain, it might be prudent to first consult the video archives of the TheFilipinaPea to study their culture, their mating habits, and their propensity to separate men from their resources. Captain? Problems, Captain? Your visit lasted only 3.8 seconds.
A planet of traitors. Disloyal to the core. Rotten like the rest of you subhuman race.
You were conned. I did warn you, Jim. Now promise me you'll never fall for another what? Very wise, Captain. Preparing to leave orbit.
I can leave.
Captain's log, supplemental. The captain has inexplicably returned to the planet's surface. His final transmission was a hysterical, almost incoherent plea for millions of something called pesos.
If you think about it, I'm kind of like a doctor, with my finger on the pulse of the Philippines. I can help to vaccinate you against all the problems you may encounter when visiting here, with an injection of information and humor. If you appreciate my services, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell for your next dose of Dr. P. Consider becoming a patron, where you'll not only be supporting my channel, but you'll receive exclusive videos and features. Now, what seems to be the problem?
I got a stiff joint.
A stiff joint? All right, let's have a look. Oh my, you sure do. I think I better keep you here overnight for observation. And I got a great bedside manner.